Now, one group that welcomed what Tarantino had to say were the protesters. Thousands were marching that day in New York and across America in protest at killings and violence by U.S. policemen.
I just do also want to say, what am I doing here? I'm doing here because I am a human being with a conscience. And when I see murder, I cannot stand by. And I have to call the murdered, and I have to call the murderers, the murderers. And I have to call the murdered, and I have to call the murderers, the murderers.
I'm getting sick of this world full of wickedness. How do they live with it? Knowing they're killing kids, talking with trickiness. Murder is sold. Just look at Gaddafi, got killed for the gold. Just look at Saddam, fam, look at Iraq. Just look at the blood spread all over the map. Murder is profit, seems nothing can stop it. That's why I'm on it, they're making me vomit. Honest. Then I look at police, murdering peeps all over the streets. Damn. Woman deceased, killed by the beast. Blood drips from their teeth, you don't know it's peak. When children are killed, let's keep it real. Let's really build. Adults shoot children, they say they were scared. Give them a uniform and watch them get cleared. Yeah, we all know it's true. Camouflage soldiers or the boys in blue got them dressing in black, moving with straps. And when they attack them, the bullets hit backs. Blow!
I just do also want to say, what am I doing here? I'm doing here because I am a human being with a conscience. And when I see murder, I cannot stand by. And I have to call the murdered, and I have to call the murderers, the murderers. To call the murderers, the murderers.
I stand for the truth and I stand for the youth. I stand for the poor, shouted out from the roof. I've been stood in the west, facing the east. I've been stood in the street, fighting police. I've been stood in the dock, the fight to be free. I've been stood by the grave. I stand in the sun, I stand in the rain, I stand in the cold and I stand through the pain. Riddle me this, like I'm with enigma. Why the word truth carry so much stigma? I praise the prophets, they're raising their profits, they're building the rockets. I'm screaming stop it, collateral damage. I hate those words, I call it murder, but nobody birds. Kids busting guns, a web getting spun, jails getting built while the youth clubs are done. It's murder.
I just do also want to say, what am I doing here? I'm doing here because I am a human being with a conscience. And when I see murder, I cannot stand by. And I have to call the murdered, and I have to call the murderers, the murderers. And I have to call the murdered, and I have to call the murderers, the murderers.
If I'm under attack, I'm gonna fight back. I've gotta fight back. My dad taught me that. The lessons I've learned, my cheek doesn't turn. My fist start to clench and my heart starts to burn. Inside I'm on fire just like Johnny Storm. And I start to sweat when it's not even warm. What's even more? I'm black and I'm poor and still under attack like my dad was before. The ones with the office and ones with the guns. Give them a uniform, badge and some funds. Even school pupils, girls handle brutal. Don't be surprised if they go up to shoot you. Don't be surprised when the road starts to cheer. When police get murdered then nobody cares. Just look what you did. Kept murdering women, kept murdering kids. Just look what you did. Kept murdering women, kept murdering kids.
I just do also want to say, what am I doing here? I'm doing here because I am a human being with a conscience. And when I see murder, I cannot stand by. And I have to call the murdered, and I have to call the murderers, the murderers. And I have to call the murdered, and I have to call the murderers, the murderers.
Tamir Rice. A 12-year-old black male child, Cleveland, Ohio. On November 22nd, 2014, Tamir was playing with a toy gun in the park. After a 9/11 call where the person calling said the gun was probably a fake and the person holding it was probably a juvenile, the police rushed onto the scene and shot Tamir within 2 seconds. Then they knocked down and handcuffed his sister and locked her in the police car. And they would not allow his mother to hold her lifeless child who lay dead in the street. After almost a year, there's been no charges filed and not even a grand jury selected.